DW Africa Link.
Imagine you woke up and there was no fuel. Not for your car, not for public transport, not even for hospitals. No farming machinery, no backup generators. Sounds almost apocalyptic, right? Well, that's the reality for many in Malawi, where a full-blown fuel crisis is grinding everyday life to a halt. So how did it get this bad? And what's the way out? That's what's coming up. I am Eddy Micah Jnr, and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Malawi's government has even sold gold reserves just to keep essential services running, a sign of how severe the fuel crisis is. A chronic shortage of foreign currency is making it hard to import fuel, and as a landlocked, import-dependent country, Malawi is hit especially hard by global shocks. From long queues at petrol stations to rising transport costs, Malawians are being forced to make impossible choices just to get through the day. For more on this, let's bring in the experts. Michael Kaiyatsa is a human rights and governance expert. I also have Chimwemwe Padatha, DW's correspondent in Malawi. Welcome, both of you, to Africa Link. It's the 27th day of April. Chimwemwe, give us an idea of how Malawians are coping with the fuel shortage.
Thank you so much, Eddy. That's true. We are currently experiencing fuel challenges here in Malawi, and the situation in pump stations is very dire at the moment. I would first of all say that if you take a walk in major cities, you find the majority of stations not selling fuel. So to say that the pump stations have run dry, but a few pumps you are likely to come across with fuel. It is a great struggle to get the commodity at the moment. Malawians are scrambling for fuel has become the order of the day. So you also experience some pockets of chaos at these pump stations because everyone wants to buy fuel, wants to fuel his or her vehicle. And now that we rely on private taxis or minibuses, the minibus operators or taxis are always in these stations to fill up their vehicles, not forgetting that some cases of bribes also being experienced in these spots where you find people conniving with operators in these pumps to fill up their vehicles. So I would say the situation is very dire at the pump stations. Filling up your vehicle has become hard, but also to say that the pump stations are now rationing the fuel to around 20 liters and some even 10 liters allocated to each vehicle. So that's what I can briefly say, Eddy.
Right. So is there even enough fuel for everyone that may need fuel if they can afford it?
That's true, Eddy. There's no enough fuel at the moment, which is also forcing people to spend nights, spending nights at these pump stations, hoping that maybe the next morning fuel will come at these pump stations. So back to your question, yes, we don't have enough fuel at the moment.
And are there particular areas in Malawi that are hardest hit? Which are the most affected areas?
I wouldn't single out a certain area which is hardly hit by the current crisis. I would say that this situation has affected both the rural and urban areas, because I would also make reference to the current tobacco marketing season where farmers are found in these remote areas. So they are struggling at the moment to bring their tobacco at the market. So the situation has affected both rural and urban areas, talking also about some critical sectors like the health sector, hospitals relying on generators. So it is even hard for some of these facilities to run their equipment because they cannot fill up their generators for the health services.
Right. Thank you very much, Chimwemwe, for giving us an idea of how dire the situation is on the ground. And I'm just wondering how Malawi got here. I mean, look, granted, there's an ongoing economic crunch. We all know, mainly caused by the war in Iran, even though there's a ceasefire between the US and Iran. The Strait of Hormuz still is closed. And so many countries that depended on oil and gas passing through the Strait of Hormuz, which is about 20% of world's oil and gas, all those countries that depended on that are facing that sort of economic crunch and the pinch. So How did we get here, Michael? Is the excuse the Strait of the Hormuz, or is there something more to it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Eddy. The situation in Malawi is not new. We have had this situation for a number of years. I would say for the last 16 years, we have had the frequent shortages. I remember in 2010, that's when we started experiencing fuel shortages across the country. This was during the time of the former DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, which was under the late Bingu wa Mutharika. The situation was so bad that in 2011, people went to the streets. We had the demonstrations across the country on a number of issues, top of which was the fuel shortages. So it's not really a new problem. Yes, the conflict in the Middle East has worsened an already existing problem. When you look at what is really the problem in Malawi, I would say the root cause is Forex. We do not have adequate reserves of Forex. You see, for example, that our Forex cover at the moment is less than a month. When in fact we are required to have at least 3 months import cover, but now it's just a month, which shows you that we have really gone down in terms of fuel. Forex availability. So Malawi does not produce fuel. We rely on imports, and because we rely on imports, we need Forex availability to ensure that fuel importers are able to buy fuel on the international market. Unfortunately, it's a very big challenge, as I have already explained. The challenge also is that each government that comes always promises that they are going to deal with the problem of Forex shortages. Unfortunately, it has been the case that every government also goes out without fulfilling this promise. If you look at the current government, for example, they promised Malawians that they're going to deal with this problem within the first 6 months of them being in power. But we are in the 7th month, and there seems to be even no solution on the table to address this problem. So it's really a problem that is rooted in the availability of foreign exchange.
And that's some good context to give us. But it makes me really wonder, if it is clear that is the problem, what's making it difficult to solve? Is there any attempt by the government to solve it? And why hasn't it been solved till now?
A very difficult question to answer, but I would attempt to answer it. Why is government failing? I think it's an issue of maybe alternatives. Malawi relies on the tobacco for foreign exchange. Tobacco is our biggest Forex earner. Unfortunately, you know what is happening on the international market, that tobacco, is no longer fetching good prices, mainly because of the World Health Organization ban on public smoking. And that has really negatively affected, our economy. For a number of years now, governments have been talking about the need to diversify our economy. But then the challenge has been finding a suitable alternative to tobacco. There have been proposals put forward, by experts that, maybe we needed to promote tourism. And unfortunately, our tourism sector remains severely underdeveloped, despite the promises that governments have been making. Just to give you a good example, the last administration even made the tourism as one of the 5 key priority areas alongside agriculture. But when you look at the budget allocations to this sector, it has been very, very, pathetic. the allocations have been very low, which has not matched, the rhetoric. So it's really a question, I think, of prioritization, and also I think politicization. Even though as a country we agree that if we are to diversify, move away from tobacco reliance, we need to invest in tourism as a sector. But what has been happening is that politicians have often prioritized a program or investments that will bring them votes. And that's why you find that a lot of investment is going into agriculture, and mostly also on the programs that are popular, like the farm input subsidy program, which the current government is implementing, which is similar to the affordable inputs program, which the previous government was also implementing. If you look at the allocations that are going towards this program, it's very huge, it's substantial, and yet it's not an investment that will lead to any productivity, which is contrary to the national goal of investing in productive programs that will generate Forex for the country. So for me, the challenge has been a lack of prioritization, but also the tendency by our leaders, political leaders, to prioritize projects that will give them votes, regardless of the consequences on our development framework.
Right. Sounds to me like a case of misplaced priority. I'm going to come back to you in a bit, Michael, to dig a bit deeper into the matter. But Chimwemwe, what is the government saying about the ongoing fuel crisis? How is it attempting to address it so that ordinary Malawians can get the fuel they need to go about their daily activity?
Yes, just to indicate that the government has made several pronouncements and press briefings. Just last week, there was another pronouncement that was made that by tomorrow, the 28th April, the situation will normalize here in Malawi. So we are yet to see this. But also, there was an announcement that the government has just sold its part of its gold reserves and secured around $30 million for fuel importation. So I should give a background on this, that this gold was bought from artisanal and small-scale miners through the central bank. So this is one of the measures that the government has announced, saying of the gold reserves, just as a way of cushioning the country from this fuel scarcity and assisting the procurement of fuel. So that's what I can make reference to, Eddy.
Right. Thank you very much for talking about that, because I really did want to address that. And I'm going to come to you, Michael, because, yes, as Chimwemwe just said, the government is saying that they would sell gold reserves to buy fuel. Is that the way to go?
Yeah, for me, government is cornered. They don't have many options available to them. And that's why I think they've been pushed to sell this gold. But just also to point out that this is not the only measure that the government has taken. We have seen also government seeking a loan from Forex Bank, a loan of about $120 million, just to ensure that they have enough dollars to procure fuel. So I'm looking at a government that is that has been put in a corner. It doesn't have many options to choose from. This is a crisis that perhaps, even though strangely, government did not foresee, and they have been forced, to do what they can. Also, considering the fact that they are under so much pressure now from the citizens who are demanding answers to address this fuel crisis.
What do you think should be done now, right, to deal with this challenge? Because only God knows how long ordinary Malawians can take this, right? we all need fuel.
I think it's important that government should really find ways of boosting its dwindling Forex reserve. Unfortunately, government has resorted to more and more borrowing, which is unsustainable also, because if you look at the current debt levels, they are unsustainable. We have over 22 trillion actually debt that the government has, and this is a huge amount of money that we have to pay back to lenders, and to think that the government would be continuing to borrow more and more is actually scary, for Malawians. But then, as I said, the government is in a fix. There doesn't seem to be a way around this situation. We have been saying for a long time now that time has come for Malawi to get serious on diversifying the economy. We've been talking about diversification for a long time, and yet this has remained, at the level of rhetoric. I think it's time now to translate the rhetoric into concrete action to ensure that indeed Malawi should not only depend on the agriculture or on tobacco, but also maybe look at the other ways of generating forex. Mining seems to offer a promise. We have recently discovered that Malawi has not only gold, but also other vital minerals, including even critical minerals. We have huge reserves of critical minerals at Kasia, not far away from Lilongwe. We have critical minerals in Palombe, in the southern region of Malawi, Chilwa, Songwe, and other places. I think the time has come for Malawi to really explore and ensure that the country generates enough revenue from all these the minerals. Otherwise, we cannot go on relying on tobacco. Tobacco is gone. If you look at the market now, even the domestic market, it's not promising. Farmers are complaining. Farmers are worried that the prices that are being offered are very, very, very low. So if we are to deal with the issue of forex shortages, which leads to fuel shortages.
Right. Thank you very much, Michael, for those details. And Chimwemwe, while all this is happening, Malawians are waiting for either the temporal or the permanent fix to this. How are people getting around this current challenge?
Yeah, Eddie, just to mention that ordinarily Malawians have now adopted innovative solutions of how to deal with this challenge, because they're finding it really hard traveling around town or taking long distances, because bus fares have nearly doubled. And you'd also see that those who live few kilometers away from town have resorted to their own means of traveling, walking to work, which include other modes of transportation, like using bicycles. And some Malawians are also opting to walk to their workplaces, or even to their work of businesses, just because they cannot afford bus fares at the moment. I also tried to interact with some Malawians on the streets, and what I got from them were some innovative ways of living, such as shortening the distance. They can walk from now and up to 5 kilometers, and then they take a bus just as a way of trying to reduce the bus fare. They walk at about 5 kilometers, and then the other distance they choose to take a bus as a way of shortening the distance. So these are some of the ways that Malawians have adopted as a way of trying to live with this challenge of fuel scarcity.
Right. And is there any idea how long this could go on for?
It's too early to tell, Eddie, how long this will take because the government is making reference to the Middle East war as well as the shortage of Forex. So you would see that the selling of gold, which I also mentioned, is a short-term measure. So it is not known as to where the other Forex will come from after we deplete the 30 million US dollars that has been used after the sale of the gold reserves. I would say it is not known at the moment as to how long this situation will last here in Malawi because we do not know where the other foreign currency will come from after we deplete the 30 million US dollars that has been used after selling the gold reserves.
Right. Thank you very much, Chimwemwe. Michael, you have the final words to wrap this up. I'm just wondering, in the meantime, also how Malawi's neighbors, SADC, could attempt to assist Malawi, if at all. Is there anything that can be done?
No, I just wanted to, before I answer that question, Eddie, I just wanted to add to what Chimwemwe was saying, that I think the government is also looking at the IMF to access the rapid financing instrument to ease the pressure. We have heard about the engagement that is ongoing for an opportunity to access the rapid credit facility. So maybe that could help ease the pressure on the government. But now back to your question. I don't know how neighbors could support because they are also dealing with their own issues. If you look at Zambia is struggling with the pricing. Citizens have been complaining that since the war broke out in Iran, the fuel prices have skyrocketed, and that has really impacted heavily on their citizens. So I don't know how Zambia would come in.
Right. Thank you very much for that. I love it when ideas are shared. The only challenge is if these ideas are implemented, and that seems to be the challenge based on what you even said earlier. Many thanks to the both of you sharing your thoughts with us. Michael Kaiyatsa, human rights and governance expert, who is also the chairperson of the Human Rights Defenders Coalition, HRDC. And also many thanks to you, Chimwemwe Padatha, DW's correspondent in Malawi.
You're welcome, Eddie. Thank you.
For many inside Malawi, the fuel crisis has been a nightmare with no end in sight.
We have been affected because everything, according to prices, rises depending on food and some of the groceries we shopped in the different shops. So people are very difficult to travel from one place to another now because of fuel crisis.
Fuel is essential in every country because it facilitates movements in several departments, movements in several sectors, be it the education sector, the health sector, the tourism sector, even the industrial sector. We all need fuel. When the fuel is scarce and expensive as it is now, challenges always erupt. Fuel has become expensive and scarce. At times we have to trek in order to reach to our destinations, and this is a challenge. Some of the business that we are doing, we have stopped a bit because we feel like it's becoming expensive. Business is no longer now providing us with resources, but then we are investing resources, abnormal resources. So it's not working.
Now, all this matters because Malawi is already struggling economically. So rising fuel prices quickly ripple through food, transport, healthcare, and daily survival. The government's move to sell gold reserves shows just how deep the crisis runs. A short-term fix, not a long-term solution. And beyond Malawi, it's a warning. When economies rely heavily on imports without strong buffers, global shocks can hit hard and fast. Share your thoughts with us on Facebook at DW Africa. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. And I am Eddy Micah Jnr. Thanks for listening.
DW. Made for minds.